My phone buzzed on the kitchen table like a rattlesnake ready to strike. One message. Late dinner with clients. Don't wait up. My thumb hovered. For a second I saw every late night, every lie she wrapped in perfume and deadlines. Then I typed back, "Tell Dylan I want my shirt back." The silence that followed hit harder than a gunshot. Then came the calls. 1, 2, 3. Her name flashing across the screen like a warning light I'd ignored for years. I didn't pick up. Not this time. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need your voice. It only needs your silence. If you've ever read a message that changed everything, stay with me. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about how a man rebuilds when his world burns down. Subscribe. And let's walk through the fire together. Dinner used to mean something. Now the radio hums old country into a room that's forgotten how to listen. 2 plates sit there, salmon with lemon butter cooling into silence. Across from me, the chair stays empty, like it's saving a seat for a promise that quit showing up. Our wedding photo above the mantel wears a thin coat of dust, the kind you don't notice until it's too late. The clock ticks, the fridge breathes, every sound is louder than her voice has been in months. I clear the table, stall a little, try to pretend this is just a long day. When I straighten the back of her chair, my hand finds her scarf. I lift it, slow. There's a smell on it, expensive, sharp, not mine. It hangs in the air like a stranger who already knows the way out. That scent didn't belong to my house, or to me. I come home wearing grease and road dust. She wears perfume and deadlines. That's marriage now. 2 people clocking in, clocking out, telling themselves surviving is the same as loving. 5 more minutes, she says to the laptop glow. Take your time, I say to the space between us. No fights, no slammed doors. Just the quiet kind of leaving, the kind that doesn't make a sound until it's already done. She closes the bedroom door like she's trying not to wake our old life. I shower, sit on the edge of the bed, listen to her laugh at something that isn't me. Her phone lights up. One preview. A sentence that curls, ends with a tiny red heart. She tilts the screen away, casual. I'm supposed to pretend I didn't see it. I don't ask. I file it away. That heart wasn't for me, and the proof wouldn't come from her lips. It would come from what she leaves behind. They've got a name for it now. Gray divorce. Guys my age trading vows for paperwork and empty rooms. Facebook is full of brave jokes and quiet panic. Podcasts call us lost men, like we built garages, mortgages, lives, and forgot to build ourselves. I used to scroll past thinking, not me. Then I caught my reflection one morning. Tired eyes, jaw set like a man waiting for a verdict. Am I next? I asked the mirror. It didn't answer. It didn't have to. Numbers don't lie. Patterns don't lie. And silence never lies. So I made a decision I could live with. No yelling, no begging, no courtroom rehearsals in my head. If a man wants truth, he doesn't argue. He observes, he collects, he lets the facts do the talking. Start with what can't spin a story, what you can see, touch, smell. That night, her scarf was still on the chair. Her scarf was still hanging over the chair, soft blue with tiny silver threads. I picked it up, meaning nothing by it, and froze. It smelled like cologne, strong, expensive, the kind worn by men who never change their own oil. It wasn't mine. I checked the laundry basket. One of my shirts was missing. The rest looked moved, like someone had been looking for something. My heart didn't race. It just slowed down, heavy and deliberate, like it was bracing for impact. I stood there, scarf in hand, and whispered to the empty room, "Whose shirt, Rebecca?" The question didn't echo, but it stayed. I folded the scarf carefully, like evidence, and set it back where it was. I didn't want to erase the proof. That scent didn't belong here, and from that moment, I knew neither did she. The next few nights, I started noticing patterns. Her phone lighting up past midnight, messages that started with work talk but ended with heart emojis. The words client dinner popped up more times than real dinners we'd shared that month. Her calendar was full of flights, business trips, and meetings that didn't exist. I didn't need to read every text to understand the story. Sometimes a man just knows when someone's talking to another world that no longer includes him. What stung wasn't the cheating. It was how easy it looked. Like loyalty was just a checkbox she'd forgotten to tick. I sat there, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge, and it hit me. You don't have to touch someone to betray them. You just have to stop choosing them. I didn't explode, didn't ask. I just started taking notes, dates, receipts, flight confirmations, screenshots, small things that tell big stories. I hid them in a folder, locked tight, labeled something boring. The anger came in waves, but I let it pass. There's a power in restraint that men forget they have. I'd learned this from years under hoods and engines. Precision beats force every time. So I sat there night after night, letting silence do the cutting. Because silence, when used right, is a scalpel. It doesn't leave stains, just truth. Every minute she thought I was blind, I was seeing clearer. Every secret she sent into the dark, I was standing there, flashlight in hand. I didn't need a fight. I needed clarity, and clarity was coming. It started with a photo buried deep in her cloud drive. June conference. The kind of folder you only find if you know what you're looking for. In one picture, she's at a hotel lobby bar, a Marriott sign glowing behind her. At first glance, nothing unusual, until I noticed his hand. Not on her, not quite, just close. Too close. The kind of closeness you don't share with a coworker. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., a week she swore she was in Dallas. The photo wasn't proof of love, it was proof of presence. A man's watch. A drink for two. The curve of her smile, softer than I'd seen in months. I zoomed in, then out. Every detail lined up like a story told without words. And that's when I realized, evidence isn't just a thing you find. It's something that stares back at you, with an address and a date you can't deny. I checked our joint credit card, not out of obsession, out of instinct. The statements don't lie. Marriott Chicago, dinner for two, lobster tail, white wine, $100 tip, 11:58 p.m. That wasn't a business dinner, that was a celebration, a toast to something that never should have happened. The numbers lined up perfectly with the photos. Same night, same city, same lie. Numbers don't need emotion, they just tell you where you stopped mattering. I printed the receipt, folded it once, and placed it beside the photos. That's the thing about betrayal. It's not in the words they say, it's in the details they forget you can read. I didn't feel rage, I felt confirmation. Cold, clean, simple. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was sitting right there in black ink and a signature that used to share my last name. A week later, I got my hands on an internal email, company memos about client trips. I searched every name, every date. Nothing. No June conference, no Chicago, just silence in the system. HR replied with a short note, no record of that event. The kind of corporate denial that tells you everything. I saved the email, converted it to PDF, and sat back in my chair. Proof doesn't always scream, it stacks, piece by piece, quiet, heavy, undeniable. I exhaled long and slow, not in relief but in readiness. Every hole in her story was now a window into the truth. She thought she'd built a perfect alibi. Instead, she left a trail anyone could follow. And I would. I wasn't collecting evidence anymore. I was building a case, not for revenge, but for clarity. Her plan had cracks, and soon she'd hear them breaking beneath her heels. She made pancakes that morning, like nothing had changed. Pop music hummed from the kitchen speaker, bright and empty. She kissed my cheek, light as dust, and asked if I wanted more coffee. I watched her flip another pancake, pretending not to notice how carefully she avoided my eyes. "You sleep okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "You?" "Long night." She smiled, but her voice cracked on the word long. I waited for the right moment, calm, steady, and said softly, "How was the lobster?" The spatula stopped midair. Her hand froze. Just for a second, everything in the room stopped breathing. The music, the clock, even her act. Then she blinked, forced a laugh, and said, "What?" But she knew, and I knew she knew. That's the cruel part about lies. They don't need to be shouted down. Sometimes, all it takes is one quiet question to make them tremble. She slid the plate in front of me, a little too quickly. The cup clinked against the saucer. Her hand shook just enough to spill a few drops. "Careful," I said, watching her fingers tighten around the handle. Hot, she muttered, staring anywhere but at me. The spoon in her coffee stirred too long, spinning and spinning until the sound turned sharp. I could almost hear her pulse in it. Her eyes darted to the window, then back to the floor. For the first time in months, she looked guilty, not tired. The truth has a way of leaking out, not through words, but through wrists, through the tremble you can't hide. I took a slow sip, watching her over the rim. She tried to smile. It fell halfway. The silence between us wasn't peace anymore. It was pressure. And I could feel it cracking, inch by inch, under the weight of what we both refused to say. After that morning, I stopped guessing. I started building. Every lie needs structure, so does the truth. I wrote dates on sticky notes, lined them up across the desk. Photos, receipts, flight details, all cataloged. I backed everything to the cloud, locked the folder, and set a passcode I'd never forget. It wasn't anger driving me, it was order. In my world, timing fixes everything. A car, a clock, a marriage coming apart, it all runs on sequence. I told myself, don't act yet. Let her dig her own hole. Revenge, if you can even call it that, isn't rage. It's precision. It's patience dressed as calm. So I sat there at night, the garage clock ticking, blue light from my laptop flickering across the walls, and I felt the balance shift. For the first time, I wasn't the one being deceived. I was the one keeping score, and she didn't even know the game had started. It took me 3 nights to dial her number, Emily Carter, Dylan's wife, the woman who, without knowing it, was living a parallel version of my hell. Her contact info wasn't hard to find. Corporate directories never guard the innocent, just the guilty. I sat in my truck outside the garage, phone glowing in the dark, thumb hovering over call. My heart didn't race. It thudded, slow and heavy, like it knew this wasn't about anger. It was about confirmation. The line rang once, twice. Then a tired, cautious voice answered, "Hello?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry as dust. "Emily," I said quietly. "Yes. Who's this?" There was a beat, the kind that stretches eternity thin. "This is Ethan," I said. "Rebecca Miller's husband." The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was recognition. She already knew the shape of this kind of pain. I could hear it breathing on the other end. We met 2 days later at a diner just off I-90. The lights were the soft yellow kind that made everyone look tired and honest. She sat in a booth by the window, clutching a mug like it was keeping her together. When I slid in across from her, she didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her eyes said everything. Half exhaustion, half relief. I laid a few photos on the table, face down. She did the same. One by one, we flipped them over. Different angles, same lies. Rebecca, Dylan, the same smiles, the same hotel carpet, the same timestamp glowing like a wound. Emily let out a breath that sounded more like a sob she'd practiced swallowing. I nodded. "They're not in Houston or Chicago, are they?" she whispered. "No," I said. "They're in each other." And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel crazy. I felt certain. Dylan told his wife he was in Houston. Rebecca told me she was in Chicago. Turns out they were both right and both wrong. The photos showed them in Chicago, not a business trip, just a carefully staged lie. GPS data from her phone matched his timestamp to the minute. Even the hotel clock in the background read the same. 2 stories built miles apart had finally collided, and when lies collide, they don't bend, they break. Emily stared at the map on my phone, her finger tracing the route they both claimed to travel. "So all this time," she murmured. "Yeah," I said, "all this time." We sat in silence, 2 strangers bound by betrayal, watching our spouse's geography crumble. Lies can cross cities, but truth has coordinates, and I'd just found them. I looked at Emily, calm and cold. Now we know where they've been. The next question is, what do we do about it? We didn't scream. We didn't trade stories out of spite. There was no satisfaction in tearing open wounds we both already bled from. Emily and I met one last time, same diner, same booth. This time, no photos, just a quiet understanding between 2 people who didn't ask for war. She slid a small flash drive across the table. I did the same. Proof, not weapons. What now? She asked. We keep it between us, I said. They've already ruined enough. We signed nothing official, but the look we shared felt like a contract. No revenge, no exposure, just truth, owned and contained. When we stood, she reached out her hand. I shook it. It wasn't forgiveness, it was closure. Revenge would have made me like them. Reality, cold, clean, undeniable, was enough. As I drove away, I realized something. The best kind of justice is silence, when silence is finally yours. The drive back to Ohio felt longer than usual. The highway stretched empty, just me, the hum of tires, and a radio host talking about America's new epidemic, loneliness. He said men my age were the most isolated generation yet. I turned it down, but his words stuck. The streets of my town were quiet when I got home. My garage smelled like oil and memory. The tools on the wall hadn't moved, but everything else had. The house creaked when I stepped in, like it was adjusting to the space she left behind. I sat on the porch that night, beer untouched, staring at the chair across from me. The wind moved through the trees, soft but sharp. And for the first time, I could hear what loneliness actually sounded like. It wasn't crying, it wasn't noise. It was the sound of wind passing through something that used to be full. A few days later, I opened my phone and started typing. Maybe we should talk. The words looked harmless enough, familiar. I stared at them, thumb hovering over send, imagining what she'd say, what lie she'd wrap in apology. My pulse slowed. I deleted the message, one letter at a time, until only the word draft glowed on the screen. That's the thing about forgiveness. It's beautiful when it's earned, but poisonous when it's rushed. I set the phone down, leaned back in my chair, and let the quiet fill the space again. Forgiving her now would have been like patching rust with paint. Looks better for a while, but the rot never stops. So I chose stillness instead. I'd rather live with scars I understand than fake healing I don't. Forgiveness can wait. Respect for myself can't. And that night, for the first time in months, I finally slept. She started packing again, routine, efficient, too calm. The flight itinerary sat half sticking out of her purse. Chicago, 2 nights, same city, same story. Her suitcase lay open on the bed. A new dress, heels that didn't look like business, perfume too heavy for a conference room. I watched her move around the room, zipping, folding, pretending. Client trip, she said casually, not meeting my eyes. Shouldn't be gone long. I smiled. Take your time, I said. She paused, surprised by my tone, waiting for a question that never came. I reached for the suitcase handle, handed it to her, and said quietly, "Have fun. You deserve it." The way her face softened almost looked like relief. She thought she'd fooled me again, but she hadn't fooled the quiet. That's where the real truth lived. And this time, I wasn't staying home. I was done being the ghost in her alibi. The next morning, I booked the same flight. Different seat, different boarding group, same destination. My luggage was light. 1 camera, extra batteries, and a quiet kind of resolve. I wasn't chasing her out of jealousy. I was chasing proof, something solid, something undeniable. I didn't want confrontation. I wanted clarity. There's a strange calm that comes with knowing exactly what you're walking into. It's not fear, it's focus. I packed slowly, checked my gear twice, and left before she did. By the time she texted me boarding soon, I was already through security, sitting 4 gates away, coffee in hand. Watching her walk through the terminal, bright dress, confident smile, phone glued to her palm, I felt nothing but distance. Not pain, not rage, just the steady pulse of a man who's done waiting for the truth to find him. This time, I was going to meet it halfway. At the gate, she stood 4 rows ahead of me, scrolling her phone, smiling at whatever name flashed across the screen. I watched her reflection in the window, not her face. That's how you study a lie. You don't look it in the eyes, you look around it. The attendant called her group. She walked up, handed over her ticket, voice light, practiced. I followed minutes later, head down, silent. Once on the plane, I saw her tilt her head toward the aisle, texting one last time before the door shut. The engines hummed, the cabin dimmed. She had no idea I was there. close enough to hear her laugh under her breath when her phone buzzed one last time. She thought the flight was taking her to freedom. She didn't know it was flying her straight into truth. And somewhere over Ohio, I realized I wasn't following her. I was following closure. When the plane door opened, cold air rolled down the aisle like a truth you can't ignore. I stayed back, letting her go first. From the window by baggage claim, I saw him, Dylan, leaning against a black sedan, that easy corporate smile on his face. He spotted her and straightened his jacket. She walked fast, radiant, alive in a way she hadn't been with me in years. His hand found her back, casual, practiced, like they'd done it 100 times. They laughed. I raised my phone, steady hands, slow breath, one click, 4K clarity, 4K. That sound, the tiny snap of the camera, felt louder than thunder. Proof doesn't shout. It whispers, I'm real. They climbed into the taxi, still smiling, the city lights reflecting off their window. I didn't chase them. I didn't need to. All I had to do was follow the truth. And that, finally, was moving in my direction. I watched them through the glass doors of the downtown Marriott. She tucked her hair behind her ear, laughing at something he said. The receptionist smiled, slid a form across the counter. Dylan filled it in without hesitation. I zoomed in. Mr. and Mrs. Carter. My chest tightened, not from pain, but from precision. They'd written their own confession, right there in blue ink. The keycard glinted under the lobby light. Room 1214. She took it from him, fingers brushing his. I caught their reflection in the mirror behind the counter, a perfect frame of guilt. I snapped the shot, then another of the elevator doors closing on their lie. One final photo, Dylan's hand at the small of her back as the elevator number blinked upward. I whispered to myself, you just signed your own verdict. The irony wasn't lost on me. They weren't checking in for the night, they were checking out of their lives. I checked into room 914, 3 floors beneath theirs. The clerk didn't look up, didn't care, the kind of indifference that keeps secrets safe. My hands didn't shake when I unpacked. Camera charged, spare batteries lined like bullets on the desk. I checked the hallway, exits, sight lines. Years of fixing engines had taught me this. Every system fails where it's weakest. I left the do not disturb sign on the door, not for privacy, but focus. Outside, the city murmured beneath the hum of the air conditioner. I sat on the bed, camera ready, eyes on the clock. Midnight. 1, 2. Somewhere above, a door closed softly. My pulse slowed, synced with the sound. Tonight, I wasn't a husband. I was a witness. Sleep didn't come. Only the steady click of time counting down to the truth. When it arrived, I'd be awake to meet it. By sunrise, I had everything lined up. Timestamps, locations, faces caught between lies and laughter. The photos spoke louder than any message I could write. I opened a new email, attached each image in order, and left the subject line blank. No greeting, no explanation. Just the truth, framed in pixels. My cursor hovered over send. For a second, I thought about adding a note. I'm sorry you had to see this. But sympathy didn't belong here. Only facts did. I clicked. The paper plane icon lifted off the screen, disappearing into her inbox. That tiny animation felt heavier than any bullet. Somewhere across town, a woman was about to see her husband's reality in full color. And as the message left my screen, so did my doubt. Words can be twisted, tone can be faked, but images don't lie. They just wait for someone brave enough to look. The phone rang minutes later. Emily. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. I saw them, she said. No tears, no screaming. Just a quiet kind of finality that only truth can bring. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked. I'm sure, I said. He's still asleep next to her, she whispered. Not for long. The line went silent. Not a goodbye, not a plan, just understanding. 2 people standing on opposite sides of the same collapse. I hung up, staring at the phone screen until it went dark. The kind of darkness that feels earned. There's no satisfaction in moments like that, just stillness. The world doesn't explode when betrayal breaks open. It exhales. And in that breath, there's no screaming, no revenge, only a shared acknowledgement. This is the cost of pretending too long. I put the phone down, knowing silence had just done its job. The next morning, I sat by the hotel window, black coffee cooling beside me. Suitcases rolled across the marble floor, voices echoing, lives in motion. And then I saw them. I saw Rebecca and Dylan walking fast, talking low, their faces pale beneath the fluorescent light. She spotted me before he did. Her eyes widened, shoulders stiffened, a crack forming in her perfect composure. She stopped mid-step, hand frozen on her suitcase handle. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice paper-thin. I looked up, calm, steady. "Visiting Chicago," I said. "You?" Her lips parted, no sound. Dylan stood behind her, expression blank, like a man realizing the floor beneath him wasn't solid. For a second, everything in that lobby fell silent, the hum of the air vents, the chatter, even time itself. And in that silence, she knew. The pretending was over. The truth had finally checked in. I took a slow sip of coffee, watching her shift under the weight of the question. "Visiting Chicago," I said again, softer this time. "You?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. She blinked, looking for words that wouldn't betray her. Then her phone buzzed on the counter between us. One short vibration. A preview flashed across the screen. "From Emily Carter. Hope you two enjoyed your stay." Her hand twitched, knocking the phone slightly. The color drained from her face as if someone had pulled the power from the room. The lobby noise came rushing back, distant footsteps, clinking cups. But we were locked in silence. She stared at the message, and I stared at her. No yelling, no scene, just truth, delivered from off-screen, precise and clean. Sometimes justice doesn't walk through the front door. Sometimes it just sends a notification. And in that moment, she finally saw it. Her lie had a sender. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling. "It was a mistake, Ethan. Just a stupid mistake." The kind of line cheaters practice in mirrors. I leaned back, hands still around my cup. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary," I said quietly. "You built a second life." Tears welled fast and desperate. "Please, it didn't mean anything." Around us, the lobby fell silent. Even strangers could feel the temperature drop. "Then why does it look so deliberate?" I asked. She opened her mouth, searching for something soft to land on, but there was nothing left. "You forgot us," I said, "but you remembered him." The words cut through the air, simple and sharp. "Forgetting memories is careless," I finished, "but building a new life while the old one's still standing, that's a choice." She covered her face, whispering apologies into her palms, but they didn't sound like remorse. They sounded like panic. I reached into my jacket, pulled out a plain white envelope, and placed it gently on the table between us. Her eyes darted to the courthouse seal stamped on the corner. "What is this?" she asked, voice cracking. "Freedom," I said. "Divorce papers. Signed." She froze, fingertips hovering just above the flap. You already filed?" "Last week," I answered, "while you were busy being Mrs. Carter." Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside, her own signature, one she'd given months ago for tax forms, stared back at her in blue ink. "That's not fair," she whispered, tears streaking through makeup. I nodded. Fairness ended when loyalty did. For a moment, she just stood there, eyes empty, the paper trembling between us. I picked up my coffee, calm, steady. "You wanted freedom," I said. "Now you have it." The sound of the envelope hitting the table felt final, like the door of a cage unlocking from the inside. She stared at the papers, trying to breathe logic into them. "You can't do this," she said. "That was for our taxes." I nodded. "It was," I replied. "You left it blank. My lawyer filled it properly, perfectly legal, witnessed, filed, and stamped." Her eyes flicked through every line, realizing each date, each box, each detail matched the truth she'd built her lies around. "You forged nothing," she whispered. "No," I said. "You just signed too early." Her hand went to her chest like she'd been hit, but it wasn't pain, it was recognition. "I didn't destroy you, Rebecca," I told her. "You did that yourself. I just signed the paperwork." The irony was surgical. She thought she'd been clever, untouchable, but law doesn't care about feelings. It just reads signatures. The papers fluttered against the table like confession pages. When she finally looked up, I wasn't angry. I was free. I didn't post a word, no screenshots, no revenge stories. The world didn't need another man airing his heartbreak for likes. I didn't need pity. I needed peace. I walked out of that hotel lobby without saying a name, without pointing a finger. The truth was already loud enough. She'd lose her reputation not because I wanted it, but because truth has its own audience. Outside, I pulled my phone from my pocket and deleted every message, every photo, every reminder. Not erasing the past, just refusing to live there. Revenge without dignity is just self-destruction with better lighting. I'd rather walk alone with calm than stand in a crowd built on rage. Real strength isn't in exposing someone else's weakness. It's in knowing when to stop. And as the hotel doors slid shut behind me, I realized something simple. A man's worth isn't measured by who broke him, but by how he leaves. The glass door turned slowly, catching her reflection between the panels. "Ethan!" she called out, voice cracking under panic and regret. I kept walking. The cold air outside hit my face like a slap I didn't need anymore. Behind me, the door spun again. 1, 2, 3 turns, trapping her in her own echo. I didn't look back. There's a moment after betrayal where silence says more than any closure speech ever could. My cab pulled up to the curb, the driver wordless, eyes forward. I climbed in, shut the door, and the world seemed to exhale. Through the rear window, I saw her standing there, small against the lobby light, clutching the papers that made her free. Or maybe alone, maybe both. The taxi rolled down the slope and I let the city shrink behind me. I didn't need to say goodbye. The door had already answered for me. When I got home, the air felt different, emptier, cleaner. I changed the locks first. Not out of anger, but finality. New keys, new start. The joint account was split by noon, passwords reset, documents archived, everything labeled and filed. I sent one last anonymous email to HR, attaching the proof. No commentary, no venom, just truth in a neat, professional format. Then I crashed on the couch, boots still on, the soft hum of the fridge the only sound left in the house. The storm was over. The damage, self-inflicted. I didn't ruin her. I simply let her choices speak for themselves. And as I drifted off, I realized something sharp and satisfying. Justice doesn't need rage to work. It just needs patience. The system moves slow, but when it does, it's merciless. By the time the house settled into quiet again, the truth was already doing its job. In a town like mine, news doesn't travel. It seeps. The day I got back to the garage, people looked a second too long, then looked away. The cashier at the corner store gave me that half-sympathetic smile. Someone must have whispered divorce, like it was a secret nobody could keep. I didn't correct anyone, didn't explain. I just worked, changed oil, fixed engines, kept my head down. The gossip came and went like weather, and I learned something about respect. It doesn't come from defending your story. It comes from living it with dignity. Men came by, tried to ask, "You okay?" I nodded, tightened a bolt, and said, "Work keeps me fine." In small towns, silence is its own kind of armor. You don't win by talking louder. You win by outlasting the noise. And every day, as I locked up the garage, I felt it fading. Pity turning into quiet respect. The phone rang one evening, her name on the screen. I stared at it for a while, then answered. Her voice was small, cracked. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't reply. She filled the silence herself. "They moved me to another branch. Dylan's gone. He just left. I don't know what to do." I leaned back, eyes on the ceiling, listening to the sound of her breathing fall apart. "I never thought it would end like this," she said. I let the words hang. "Rebecca," I said finally, calm and low, "respect doesn't die when love does. It ends the day you stop respecting us." She started to cry, a sound that used to undo me. This time, it didn't. I waited until she caught her breath, then said quietly, "Take care of yourself." Click. The call ended. So did everything else that ever tied us together. There was no drink to celebrate, no whiskey, no toast, no loud music filling the gaps. I cleaned the garage instead, put every wrench, every hammer back in its place, like order could fix what chaos left behind. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, then went dark when I flipped the switch. Outside, the night was quiet, honest. I sat on the porch, the same spot where I used to wait for her headlights to pull in. This time, no car came. Just the hum of crickets and the slow rhythm of my breathing. For months, that space inside me had been filled with anger, acidic, sharp, restless. But sitting there, hands still greasy from work, I felt something different. Stillness. It wasn't joy. It wasn't revenge. It was peace, taking the seat that fury had been warming all this time. I didn't smile. I just exhaled. And for once, that was enough. On the mantel, one frame survived the cleanup. Me and my dad, standing by the old Chevy we rebuilt together. Both of us covered in oil and pride. He had that crooked grin, the one that said hard work fixes almost anything. Under the summer sun, I remember him handing me a wrench and saying, "When someone breaks you, son, don't rebuild smaller, rebuild stronger." Back then, I thought he meant the truck. Now I knew better. He was talking about men, about how we don't stay down, we don't stay bitter, we rebuild. I wiped the dust off the frame, the glass cool under my thumb. The garage was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock. I smiled, faint but real. He'd be proud, I think. Not because I got even, but because I didn't lose myself trying to. For the first time, his words finally made sense. Mornings came early again. I started running before sunrise, just me and the sound of gravel under my shoes. Breakfast was simple. Black coffee, 2 eggs, quiet. I fixed the old Chevy that had been sitting too long, tightening bolts, replacing parts that had waited for years. The smell of oil and steel felt like home. The house followed suit. Curtains washed, shelves cleared, the air moving again through open windows. I let the wind in, the kind that carries both chill and promise. Every nail I hammered, every screw I turned, was less about repair and more about rhythm, getting back to myself one task at a time. By the end of that week, the house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt lived in. I stood in the middle of the room, breathing deep, and realized something simple but solid. The home hadn't changed. I had. The house was just learning to breathe again, with me. A week later, a single envelope arrived, my lawyer's letterhead printed clean across the top. Inside was the confirmation. Case closed, records filed, divorce finalized. No surprises, no appeals. Just the end. I signed my copy, sealed it in a manila folder, and placed it neatly inside the cabinet with everything else that used to define us. Bank forms, insurance papers, her old signature. A tidy graveyard of promises. The last loose ends tied themselves quietly. New account, new name on the deed, no more shared anything. I didn't feel triumph. I felt punctuation. The clean period at the end of a long, painful sentence. I held the envelope a second longer, then smiled, not out of joy, but relief. Some chapters don't need fireworks. They just need to end cleanly, without smudge or regret. I slid the file shut and whispered, "That's that." The sound of closure was quieter than I expected, and heavier. The sign flickered like it was too tired to glow, Route 33 Diner. I hadn't planned to stop, but something about the warm light cutting through the cold night pulled me in. Inside, it smelled like coffee, bacon, and second chances. The waitress had brown hair pulled into a loose knot and eyes that didn't need mascara to feel kind. She poured my coffee before I asked, steam curling up between us. "Rough day?" she said, her voice easy, honest. I thought about lying, then smiled faintly. "Rough marriage," I answered. She laughed softly, not the nervous kind, just enough to say, "Yeah, I've heard that before." The jukebox in the corner hummed an old Springsteen song, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a man defined by what he'd lost. I felt like someone just passing through, taking a breath before whatever comes next. Her name was Claire. She didn't pry. Didn't ask about the ring mark on my hand or the weight behind my eyes. Instead, she slid a slice of apple pie onto the counter. "On the house," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. We talked about old cars, rusted engines, and the kind of patience it takes to fix something worth keeping. She told me about her younger brother, still in school, smart kid, just needed a break. Her smile was steady, not flirtatious, real, the kind that doesn't try to fill silence but makes it easier to sit in. I looked at her and realized what had been missing all along, being seen without being judged. When I left, she waved through the glass door, light glinting off her bracelet. Driving away, I caught myself smiling, not because of her, but because, for the first time, I remembered what warmth felt like. The next week, I went back to work full-time. The smell of oil, metal, and summer heat hit me the moment I rolled up the door. A regular customer, old trucker named Carl, grinned when he saw me. "Didn't think you'd still be around, Ethan," he said. "You're the only guy who can make this thing run." I smiled, grabbed my wrench, and took the job. The Chevy under the lift was a mess, rusted bolts, tangled lines, but it felt good to get my hands dirty again. I turned on my old rock playlist, the same songs I used to fix engines with my dad to. The rhythm came back naturally, grease on my skin, sweat down my back, and peace somewhere in between. For months, I'd been searching for worth in words and justice. Turns out, it was always in my hands. Every turn of the wrench tightened something in me too. A new email blinked in my inbox one morning. Emily Carter. I hadn't heard from her since the hotel. The message was short, no drama, no explanations. "Thank you for keeping it dignified," she wrote. "My son's doing better. We're moving soon. Take care of yourself." Attached was a photo, her and her boy, smiling, sunlight behind them. I stared at it for a while, not out of nostalgia, but respect. We'd both crawled through the same wreckage and managed to walk out clean. I typed back 2 words: "Stay strong." That was all that needed saying. Some stories don't end with friendship or forgiveness. They end with survival. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and realized that the pain had done its job. It had stripped me down to what mattered: truth, quiet, and the rare kind of peace that doesn't demand attention. It just sits there, solid, earned. One night, I caught myself scrolling through old contacts. Her name still sat there, Rebecca Miller, like a ghost that hadn't figured out it was dead yet. For a moment, my thumb hovered over call, maybe just to hear her voice, to see if it sounded different, but I didn't press it. Instead, I opened the drawer beside me, pulled out the small box where I'd kept my ring. It was still there, dull from disuse, a circle that once meant forever. I held it for a second, then set it inside, closed the lid, and slid it away. The urge faded, replaced by something steadier. You don't need to reopen old wounds to prove they've healed. Sometimes, restraint is the truest kind of closure. I turned off the light, laid back, and smiled at the quiet. The past will always whisper. You just have to stop answering when it calls. The next morning, I drove to a job site 2 towns over. The radio played one of those truck stop podcasts, guys talking about the lost men of America, broken marriages, empty houses, half-finished dreams. I listened for a minute, then reached out and turned it off. The cab filled with wind, the sound of tires humming steady against the asphalt. For once, the silence didn't sting. It sounded like direction. The world likes to label you when you fall apart, lost, broken, left behind. But those are just words for men who stopped moving. I hadn't. I was still here, still working, still rebuilding. I looked out at the road stretching straight ahead and said quietly, "I'm not lost." The words didn't feel like defiance. They felt like truth. Some men wait to be found. Others find themselves. That day, somewhere between the static and the wind, I chose which kind I'd be. A week later, I stopped by the diner on Route 33. Same hum of neon, same smell of coffee and sugar, same brown-haired waitress behind the counter. "Back again, huh?" Claire said, smiling. "Guess I missed the coffee," I replied, but we both knew that wasn't it. We talked longer this time, about music, about her brother, about cars that refused to die. Her laughter wasn't loud, it was warm, patient, real. The kind of sound that made the night feel smaller and safer. The world outside was still the same. Broken headlines, lonely highways. But for a few minutes, none of that mattered. She didn't ask about Rebecca, and I didn't bring it up. We just talked. Two people carrying scars like old tattoos, visible, but not open wounds anymore. When I left, she said, "Drive safe, stranger." I smiled back. For the first time in a long while, safe sounded possible. That night, in the quiet kitchen, I found myself thinking of Dad again. His voice, rough from years in the garage, saying, "When someone breaks you, son, don't rebuild smaller, rebuild stronger." I wrote it down on a scrap of paper, pressed it flat against the fridge with a magnet. 4 words that felt like a direction more than a memory. I read them again out loud this time. Rebuild stronger. It wasn't about fixing what was lost. It was about becoming someone who couldn't be broken the same way twice. I took a deep breath, the kind that fills the lungs and clears the head. The air felt lighter, cleaner. Outside, the world was still turning, indifferent and steady. But inside that kitchen, something shifted. That note on the fridge wasn't a reminder anymore. It was a promise, to my father, to the man I used to be, and to the one I was still building. After everything, structure became my peace. I built my days the way I used to rebuild engines, tight, deliberate, no loose screws. Up at 6, run 2 miles, breakfast clean, work until sunset. No more pointless parties, no more noise pretending to be connection. At night, I read. Not the self-help kind, books that reminded me men still build, still fix, still rise. It wasn't glamorous. But there was something steady about keeping promises to yourself when no one's watching. Discipline didn't cage me. It covered me, like a roof over the soft parts of my heart. I wasn't chasing happiness anymore. I was maintaining it, like oiling a machine before it rusts. Some nights the loneliness still tried to crawl in, but routine kept it out. Order, I learned, is a kind of mercy. When your heart's been broken, discipline doesn't numb the pain. It gives it a purpose. It was late, the kind of night when neon lights hum and everything feels half asleep. Claire was wiping down the counter, flipping chairs onto tables one by one. "You don't have to help," she said when I picked one up. "I know," I replied, setting it neatly beside hers. Our hands brushed once, just enough to feel warmth without weight. We both paused, then laughed, soft, unplanned, like the world had finally loosened its grip for a second. The place smelled of coffee and old songs, and for that brief moment, there was nothing to fix, nothing to hide. Just 2 people at the edge of closing time, holding a silence that didn't hurt. Outside, rain began tapping against the windows. She looked at me, her eyes tired but kind. "Drive safe," she said again. I nodded. "See you soon." It wasn't a promise, but it felt like the start of one. A few nights later, as she refilled my cup, I said it before I could second-guess myself. "Coffee on Sunday?" She blinked, surprised, then smiled, the kind that starts small but grows honest. "Yeah," she said softly. "I'd like that." She tore a piece of napkin from the dispenser, scribbled her number in looping handwriting, and slid it across the counter. I folded it once, tucked it into my shirt pocket, feeling the faint warmth of her touch linger on the paper. "Don't lose it," she teased. "Wouldn't dare," I replied. The diner door jingled when I left, the night air cool against my face. For months, everything had been endings, but that napkin, that tiny slip of paper, felt like a green light in the dark, a small, steady pulse of hope. Some chapters don't begin with fireworks. They start with coffee and a name you're finally ready to say out loud. One evening, my phone buzzed. A text. Rebecca. The name alone felt like a voice from another life. "Hi, Ethan. Just wanted to say I'm moving into a smaller place. Things are hard, but I'm sorry." Again. I read it twice, not out of anger, but detachment. The words didn't sting anymore. They just sounded distant. I typed back, "I hope you find peace." Nothing more, nothing less. No questions, no warmth, no bitterness. Just civility. The kind that comes when you've already walked out of the fire. I didn't wait for a reply, and none came. That, too, was closure. People think healing means forgetting. It doesn't. It means remembering without bleeding. As the phone dimmed, I realized the truth. She was still trying to reach the man she left behind. But that man didn't live here anymore. The address had changed. And so had I. That night, I took the long way home. The freeway stretched like a ribbon of gold under the streetlights, the world moving in slow motion. The radio hummed low, Tom Petty, something about freedom, and the air through the window felt cleaner than it used to. The cab smelled like old leather and motor oil, pieces of my life that never lied. Each mile put more distance between who I was and who I was becoming. The skyline faded in the rearview mirror, city lights dissolving into the dark. I didn't feel empty. I felt weightless. For so long, every road had led back to someone else. Tonight, it led home. To no one's arms but my own. The steering wheel vibrated steady beneath my hands, and I smiled at the thought. The road doesn't need to be new to take you somewhere different. Sometimes, you just need to keep driving. The next morning, Ohio woke soft and golden. Sunlight stretched across the porch, catching the edge of my coffee cup as steam curled into the cold air. The garage door creaked open, and for once, the sound felt welcoming. My inbox filled with messages from clients, new jobs, new names, new beginnings, the kind of busyness that meant life was moving again, not running away from anything, just running right. I sipped the coffee, strong and dark, and listened to the hum of the small town waking up. Birds, a distant mower, the faint clink of tools in the garage. Everything ordinary, everything good. There was no grand lesson, no dramatic closure, just balance returning, piece by piece. For the first time in a long time, the calendar wasn't something I survived. It was something I filled. The world didn't owe me peace. I'd built it myself, one quiet morning at a time. We met on a Sunday morning, away from the diner and the noise of other people's stories. A small park by the river, coffee cups in hand, the air cool and honest. She talked about her younger brother, how he finally got into college, how proud she was. I told her about my dad, about the truck we built together, about what he taught me without ever saying much. The conversation wasn't heavy. It didn't orbit pain or betrayal. It drifted toward plans, ideas, quiet dreams. She wanted to open her own bakery someday. I wanted to take a road trip with no destination, just drive until the sky ran out. For once, it wasn't about what we'd lost, but what we might still build. The breeze picked up, rustling the coffee lids. I looked at her and thought, this is what healing sounds like. Not silence, but laughter without weight. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the folder I'd kept hidden for months. Pictures, receipts, screenshots, the archive of a past I'd already outgrown. I went through them slowly. Some I deleted without hesitation. Others I kept, not as scars, but reminders. Proof of what I'd survived. When I finished, I closed the folder, right-clicked, and renamed it Done. The screen dimmed, reflecting my face back at me, calm, older, steadier. I didn't need to erase it all. The past wasn't my enemy anymore. It was just behind me, where it belonged. I shut the laptop, leaned back, and smiled. A quiet one, the kind that doesn't ask for applause. Moving on doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means refusing to let it happen again. The ghosts were still there, sure, but they'd stopped speaking. And for the first time, I didn't need to answer them. Business started to grow again. I upgraded the garage, new lights, fresh paint, a clean sign out front that read Ethan's Auto Works. It felt good to see my name standing on its own. One afternoon, a young kid came by asking if he could learn the trade. I saw something of myself in him, nervous, hungry, unsure. I handed him a wrench and said, "Start with this bolt. Don't rush it." He grinned, focused, hands trembling the way mine once did. I taught him the little things, patience, precision, pride. Somewhere in the middle of the lesson, I realized I wasn't rebuilding anymore. I was leading. The echoes of what broke me had turned into guidance for someone else. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a long time. Turns out, strength doesn't come from forgetting the pain. It comes from turning it into something that helps someone else stand. One evening, Claire and I sat outside the diner, the sky brushed pink and gold, the air humming with crickets. She looked at me, eyes soft. "You seem lighter," she said. I smiled. "Maybe I am." The truth was, I hadn't realized it until she said it. The anger, the fear, they'd all faded like noise behind a closed door. We didn't talk about love, not yet, but something in the quiet between us felt like an open door, a start, not a repeat. She took a sip of her coffee, then said, "You deserve something peaceful, Ethan." I nodded. "Maybe we both do." The sun slipped lower, the light gentler, the world still turning. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for what came next. I was ready for it. Healing doesn't always end in romance, but sometimes it does begin with the courage to let peace in. I scrolled back to the first message, "Late dinner. Don't wait up," and felt nothing but distance. I remembered the Chicago lobby, the way time stopped when truth finally walked in. I remembered the envelope sliding across the table, the courthouse seal cold and clean. I remembered the porch in Ohio, wind moving through the trees, peace taking the seat anger kept warm. And I looked down Route 33, where a diner light still cut through the dark and a woman with steady eyes poured second chances like coffee. Some endings aren't tragedies, they're invitations to rebuild. I'm not rebuilding smaller, I'm rebuilding stronger. So here's the truth I earned. You don't get back what broke, you get back who you are. You don't need applause or revenge or an audience. You need a backbone, a blueprint, and time. The rest follows. If you've ever chosen peace over rage, drop "Rebuild Stronger" in the comments. Subscribe, stick around, and follow this journey. There are more roads ahead, some quiet, some bright, and I plan to drive every one of them.